Welcome to Comic Cave, where art and imagination collide. I'm your host, DNDWife, and along with my co-host, DM Eguile,
How's it going, everyone?
we dive into the vibrant world of Dungeons & Dragons art. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just love exploring creative expressions, you're in the right place. Let's journey together as we reveal the stories behind the art and share tips to inspire your own creations. Ready to uncover some artistic magic? Let's get started. Today, we are going to be diving right into the miniature for Drexla.
Yeah, right. It's our last one. So we've finally gone over both the digital artwork and all the minis.
Yep. This is the final of the miniature painting series that we started for specifically the characters of Extremes.
And like I was kind of laughing a couple episodes ago was the fact that we've done this, but now at this point there are probably going to be a new set of minis and artwork coming out.
That we're going to start painting and
so
talking
I feel like we're just going to
about.
be in this endless loop of when we finally finish, we just start the next batch of artwork and
more
minis.
Content, more things to show off, right? So that'll be fun. So today we are joined also by our special guest, Dan, who is going to be talking about his miniature Drexla. And that's going to be super fun. We're going to be just discussing the inspiration behind the miniature, what kind of goes behind the look of Drexla, also how he chose the particular miniature to use for that. We're going to be asking some of the tips and tricks behind the painting and building of Drexla as a miniature, what we included to make sure that it sort of exuded that vibe of Drexla's, of who she is, and then just given some advice on what to do for various miniatures, various techniques that you want to portray or, just talk about.
Yeah. And then don't worry, Dan, you don't have to do the voice this time. You can just stick with your normal voice.
I really appreciate that.
So essentially, I think we've given a little bit of a brief history of your play style, but if you wanted to kind of sum it up, how would you say you represent in the field of D&D, but how much experience?
I'm probably, I would say, a veteran player. I've been playing since early 80s, back in high school. I graduated in 88.
OG player.
I've been playing for a long time. Started off with my neighbor and my mom and dad. He played, and he got me into the books and everything. And then I got in the D&D club at school, and then just hanging out with friends and playing throughout the years and trying to find good groups and long-lasting characters.
So I would say, at this point, what number character is Drexla in the grand scheme of your adventuring? It's probably at least double-digits, I'd imagine.
Right?
Yeah, probably about 25th character. I would think it's been a lot. Yeah.
And it's just really funny, as we were talking with Entlink, it's like it's her first, and so now we have Dan, where it's like, okay, now we got someone who's made characters throughout decades.
Right, and we've been playing for 8 years, and Luna's my third.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, this is your third character with us, so it's obviously we've seen a pretty good transition between the various. I mean, none of these characters have been the same.
Not at all.
Between all the characters.
Been different personalities. So it's really fun to see something new and interesting come out that we haven't seen yet. Yeah. So first, we'll talk about the miniature, exactly what it looks like. She's sort of seated. It's a very diminutive-looking, sort of little girl character almost, sitting on a small crate as she's tinkering with, it looks like something in her hand, with a wrench. She's got all these tools also strapped to her or on her backpack. She's got these cute little blonde pigtails and bright blonde hair. And so you kind of get this like a bubbly mechanic sort of vibe to her, which is really fun. And I just kind of like this sort of ingenious tinkerer with the love for flight, because she doesn't have the normal wings that you see on a fairy, the iridescent, beautiful, magical wings that rain dust and everything. These are mechanical wings that sprout out of the back.
Now I would say probably in my opinion, like as obviously a dungeon master too, this is probably the one mini out of all of them that kind of has to have a little bit of that like extra imagination, like you were just saying.
A little
right?
bit.
Like, there aren't really wings on the mini itself.
Not the miniature, but the backpack is there.
The backpack's there, but I mean, you're describing the wings.
True.
It's not really there.
True.
Obviously, that's the art. But this case, the mini has to represent what it can, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, the other thing too, that I've always noticed, is it's obviously a little larger. Can't be too tiny. I know, Dan, you were probably searching for something as small as you could.
Yeah, I was trying for quite a while, and it is a challenge to try and find a mini for a tiny character. So at some point, you just have to accept what you could find, and like John said, suspend disbelief and use your imagination and work with what you got.
Yeah.
And I think it represents her pretty well.
Right. Unfortunately, a lot of us did go with like the Hero Forge miniatures, but it's really tough to get that small size, even even with the more professional brands of miniature makers out there. So you really had to struggle to find something that was both small but still had enough detail to show this is Drexla.
Definitely.
I mean, you went and bought your own 3D printer to even try to solve this problem.
I did, and the capabilities of 3D printers are fairly limited even nowadays. You can do some things, but when you start getting into the micro tiny stuff, they just can't.
Yeah, I kind of figure what I always envision is we'll probably have multiple minis to kind of represent different spatial sizes. You know, like I think you were talking the little fairy mini that we can maybe miniature down to where it's not necessarily the real representation, but
give
more,
a gist.
You know, it's kind of like every now and then I will get the kind of the silhouette minis that represent invisible. You know, I'm not the biggest fan because I feel like if they're invisible, you shouldn't see them at all.
Right.
But like sometimes those little stand-ins can really help in terms of interpreting where they are.
Yeah, or I'm sure we've used them when we've denoted like spirits or ghosts in a certain area as well.
And I like too because obviously minis is a little bit where I can kind of put a little 2 cents in. Is that cool? It's also nice because she's one of the ones that's using my stands the most for height.
Yeah,
so I think it's kind of cool too because like in case of Drexla's mini, we see it a lot more up close in a sense, even though she's the smallest.
Yeah,
because she's always on these like pedestals raised up because she's flying 50, 60 feet above everything, keeping that bird's eye view. So it's always kind of nice with it kind of even more kind of, it gives us like a unique perspective. So it's like, oh, well, she's closer to us,
which
players,
is why we see bigger.
Which is why we see her bigger, like forced perspective.
Yeah, it also makes it look, the way I view it is this is a magnified look of Drexla. So obviously in my imagination, she's a lot smaller in comparison to the rest of the party. But this is just gives us what she looks like up close. And that's the way I view it as a miniature.
So when it came to the mini, Dan, I know you kind of obviously picked this specific one for the certain look, but was there really kind of a way that the paint job you wanted that she kind of developed, or was this kind of let her make the decision?
Pretty much. I had kind of designed her kind of steampunk-ish, and used some of the kind of the beiges and browns and some of the brighter colors on her initial drawing, and I had sent that to DNDWife, and she painted it for me based off of that initial picture that I sent her.
Yeah, because you had a commissioned sort of a digital artwork done that had what her jumpsuit looked like and what her hair looked like. So I kind of tried to exude that similar look in there. I couldn't get everything because obviously you have limitations with the size of miniatures, but I hope that I did a good enough job of just putting in all the jumpsuit, the colorfulness, but also the mechanical aspect for her.
Yeah, no, you did amazing.
I think at least I hope that it it looks proper.
I mean, it definitely has like the techno punk kind of feel to it, and I think obviously we know at this point in the story now. Obviously, when we're talking about Drexla's character, this is a year ago.
Yeah, quite a while ago.
And we're missing a secondary character that which I think once we get a good mini down for Mark or Adam, as we call him now, it started off. That's why I'm always like started off as Mark, but that just shows like the art has changed, the interpretation has changed, and I'm really looking forward to when we kind of knock out that really good kind of automaton to go with her.
Yeah, and
I think if we make it just a little bigger, and then that will really kind of encapsulize. I mean, at this point,
size,
with 3D printing, I kind of half expect you to show up with like an actual model that opens up.
She can fit into.
And there's a little tinier model of Drexla inside the
if I could manage it.
Right. You know? But I am excited to see when we finally get her companion and start seeing that mini kind of get developed as well. Because we've seen the art. Like when we saw her original art, he's in it.
That's true.
So it's just kind of that one little like aspect we're missing in the mini side.
Yeah. I'd really love to not only see a Mark or Adam miniature, but to paint it would be cool as well, just because he's got so many different components. It's all metallic, but that's the challenge as a painter, is you have to figure out ways to make something that is all metal stand out and have differences.
Well, now that we upgraded his size to medium size with the full plate, now I can get an actual regular size miniature.
Right,
and I already have one printed off.
Because he was still like a little roly-poly, so we'll have that soon too.
Absolutely.
But I mean, obviously, behind the scenes with you and I, there was a lot of, because you're also one of my players that's using kind of a unique class as well. So how much changed from Drexla in her like initial conception to when I kind of was like, hey, would you like to try something unique?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of change because not really knowing what to expect. It being a kind of a homebrew character that we're even homebrewing further to fit within the campaign that we have. I mean, we kind of... You had described to me the demon, these, basically they're kind of psychotic, where they're just like think the world's against them. They're doomsday preppers.
That's that.
And
Right on the nose.
Drexla at the beginning always said, because her mama and papa that found her were Dimmin, but she got a different side of the Dimmin. They kind of broke away from the Dimmin. They wanted to be out and help people and share the technology that they had. And so that's what she grew up on. And then when she ran into the real Dimmin, she was in for a shock, because they were very screw everybody else. This is all about us. We don't care.
Bit of a culture shock.
And so she's really had to come to terms with that, and she's kind of distanced herself from the I'm a Dimmin part that she started off with. So now she's a Tabaxi.
Yeah,
that's right. Honorary Tabaxi.
That's why I'm really looking forward to her second mini, because I feel like that's really going to solidify her changing. And obviously, I know that Entlink is probably furiously at this, even right now,
drawing up something.
The new Drexla kitty cat form.
Absolutely.
That she's super excited for. Is there any kind of more like modern or like anime, video games, anything that really took into
anything that
the design
inspired
for
her?
With Drexla's thing is, since she lost her mom and papa, she really wants to belong to something. So we went through basically a month of training and helping out the Tabaxi tribes, solve their problems and bring them together. And then we became honorary members of the Tabaxi. So now basically she thinks she's a Tabaxi now, because they accept her. She belongs. She's happy. She has her immediate family, which is the adventuring party. And she has the Tabaxis.
This sort of accepting community.
She made herself a little cat suit with a mechanical tail that whips around, and little
cool.
bunny ears, and kind of worked her visor into cat eyes and everything, because that's what she identifies most with at this point now. And
I'm curious if you'll be able to find a mini that closely represents
that would be cool to find.
I need to find one of those samurai cat.
That would look cool.
The Simpson did it moment for you when I was like, like samurai cats, and you didn't know anything about that.
Samurai cats for Adam. That would be
that would be cool.
I upgraded his when I rebuilt him into the plate armor version of himself. I kind of gave him a cat-like,
a little bit cat ears.
visage.
So like I said, that's what's so cool. I think like out of all the characters, really Drexla has like that most like kind of chaotic shift, given her background. Which is going to make for really interesting minis as we go along.
Yeah, but I think it also denotes like your search for family. Drexla's search for finding out where she belongs, where she's supposed to be. And so the Tabaxi are finally the people that she's like, okay, they accept that I am small and that I can't do much, but they're still willing to give me a shot and let me train and do it in my own way. Yeah, so I really appreciate that, but I want to know also, like, we included a lot of bright pink, a lot of white as accents as well to the pink, and to go along, especially with the bright blonde hair.
It's very Barbie.
Yeah, very Barbie. So I gotta ask, what was the sort of inspiration behind those particular colors for Drexla's look?
Blonde bombshell.
Yeah.
I kind of took a lot of inspiration from the Tina character in Borderlands.
Okay,
just because
that makes sense.
she's kind of crazy, and
She's got that chaotic energy.
She's a tinker. She likes building things, blowing things up, and all that other kind of stuff. And I thought that kind of encapsulated the Fae side of her.
That's
because
perfect.
We were talking earlier about nature versus nurture. She doesn't know what a Fae is. She hasn't had a lot of experience with the Fae, but she still has a little bit of chaotic in her that she tries
it's
to
in her DNA.
Yeah, she tries to keep it under control, because chaos does not work with tinkering. I can't shake a bag of gears up and then come up with a machine.
It'll explode.
It has to be there has to be order and controls. So I think there's a lot of conflict within Drexla as she works through.
I always got this, I guess, ages myself. I always got like a tank girl vibe.
Yeah, a little bit like that Lori Petty.
Oh, you got to check it out. I feel like that'll be Drexla when she gets into her later
that
years.
irreverent humor.
Check it out.
Yep.
It's a great classic 90s movie based off a comic
fun.
book. It's really good. Same kind of the character has these kind of like sheared off pieces of hair from explosion, but she's got blonde hair. And there's like bits and bobs that are burnt and sometimes have weird things in them.
She has no problem experimenting with different things and trying out.
And of course she drives a tank.
Yeah.
So kind of she's inside a big machine like Drexla.
Yeah.
I always kind of thought that was where you got your inspiration. So it's kind of funny to me that you haven't actually heard of that.
Right. That's pretty cool.
But mostly the Tiny Tina thing, just because
I definitely see that.
I get the Tiny Tina weapon of destruction kind of stuff.
And just that chaoticness too, because with everything that's happened to Drexla, it does kind of exude that Tiny Tina too, where something really horrible happened, but she's managed to persevere through it as best as she can. And sometimes that isn't sane as you might expect, but you get the job done any way you can. So I appreciate that look. I think it really fits in with Drexla's sort of personality and the way she at least started to present herself at the beginning of the campaign. I think it really fits. Yeah. I also really loved putting in some of the metallic accents that I put in here. Besides the backpack, obviously, which is completely metal, I put in some different types of like bronze and silver, titanium sort of looks and buttons, different buckles and stuff. But I also gave her that wrench that she's working on her suit with. She's got a sort of bracers on her arms that are metallic. And I even have this little tiny hammer that's tucked into the little like sort of loops on her legs, like a little tool belt almost, but on her legs. So it's just really fun. She's got a little pack on the side that's got some metallic little like buttons and stuff as well to match, that she just keeps like spare parts in. So it's really interesting to see how she kind of looks, how it evokes this tinkerer sort of vibe. And I want to ask, like, what made you settle on the tinkering aspect of Drexla? Like, what inspired that part of her?
What kind of tinkerer, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's so many different types.
There are a lot. I think it fit well within Drexla's background. Like I said, she was an orphan. She was adopted. Even with that, she still always felt kind of alone. And in her grand scheme of things, and she's not quite sure how she's going to get it done yet, she wants to basically create her own sentient friends. She wants to create, for lack of a better term, the first Warforged. The first Warforged in this realm. Because right now, the Demon, they have steampunk type stuff. They're probably just bordering on computerized things.
Starting to get there.
With her imagination and her abilities, she's way beyond that. She's already created a rudimentary form of teleportation for objects. She's done certain things that, as far as she knows, the other demon don't have yet. She's already created her first her mech suit, which has its own sentience that converses with her and can converse with other people, which is the first step towards the Warforged that she wants to do. So she has grand ambitions. Whether she can do it all remains to be seen.
She's going to lead the world of Extraeus to the Matrix.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm going to feel like. She's going to be eventually the program for the engineer.
Yeah, just
I
running
made
everything.
this world.
But I also want to talk about how we came to get all these details inside the miniature. Because it's one thing to talk about how cool it looks, but it's another to be sitting there.
That's definitely your cup of tea, because I don't know how you get that small detail.
Well, this was tough because it's a much smaller miniature. It's supposed to represent a fairy, so she's got to have very delicate, very tiny, detailed features. And I think probably the best detail part of this, the easiest, would be the glow base that I put on her, just like everybody else got glow, but this one I had to put hot pink glow paint.
I think if you were telling me you had to put a ton of layers.
I did. So like all of them, you really do have to do a base coat of just a base paint for whatever the paint is. So for this one, I chose a pink color as the base coat and I put it on there, but it is still not enough. I had to put like 3 or 4 coats of that on there. And then on top of that, I had to put another 3 or 4, even possibly 5 coats of the glow paint. Yeah, to really look pink and glowy. And it looks awesome. I love it. I love the way it looks, but it did take a long time.
And I think it's going to be interesting too, because like obviously with Drexla, I think with others you've put little accents and stuff, but I think you're probably waiting for the mechanical one to kind of incorporate more. I would like to see kind of the blues and the yellow maybe mixed in with that one,
because it's different buttons. Drexla, just because her base is hot pink doesn't mean that's the motif for all your technology. So I would like to see like different little glowing bits in the technology. That would be super fun.
When we get Adam,
I'd love to do some glowing computerized bits.
Depends on, we'll see when you bring the mini as to what she can do with it.
Yeah, maybe if there's a screen, I'd like to really do some like really tiny like code scroll work almost, if I could.
Right. That would be cool.
So with something this small, did you have to probably layer this quite a bit?
It was tough, yeah. So, and not only that, but as you can see, she's in a seated position.
Yeah, that probably made it a little harder.
And her hands are right in front of her face, so it really made it difficult to paint the facial aspect of the miniature. It was hard enough as it is painting all the different crevices for like her body and the way it's formed, but the face was, I think, the hardest aspect of this, because I really had to go in there, and it's so tough to make it look like an actual face without like making the eyes look all funky and weird. It's already tough as it is when you can see the face without any obstructions.
Right.
And now this is smaller. It's obstructed, and so I had to do layers. I also had to make sure that the paint was watered down, but not too much, so that it just slid off, because it is in such a weird sort of contraption. I had to place it like sideways to dry, to make sure that the paint didn't like run and do all sorts of things I didn't want it to.
Like you were saying, now obviously with its hands being in front, now is there any kind of technique that you have that kind of helps you? Because I feel like if I was doing something like that, I would hit the arm and then instantly like hit the body as I missed past it. Yeah.
So I took care of the face first. That way, if I hit the arm, I could just wipe away the paint, and I didn't have to worry about it, because
important things
face,
first.
Yeah, the face is the most important, obviously, and it's the one with the most detail. So you don't want to sit there working so hard on something and only then to
ruin it.
Yeah, to draw a big smudge all over it. That's tough. So I really had to just sit there and work on it. But getting the paint done for the face first really made it easier to kind of work on everything else once that was done.
So, yeah, see, that's kind of funny, because I would have assumed the opposite myself. Like, I feel like, I think it could be just because every video I see, especially in like media, it's like the eyes are the last. You do the face last because you don't want anything. So it's kind of interesting to hear you say do it first.
In this one, I had to do it first because of the obstruction.
This specific one?
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
Mostly, I would say do the face last, because it is kind of like the most delicate part. So you want that to be kind of the end of fiddling with a miniature. But for this one, I had to do it first. Otherwise, I could potentially run the risk of damaging it later.
So I got to ask, Dan, since you're obviously one of our veterans, and Eric has let us know quite of his painting. Have you painted many minis in your day?
I have not. I have little short, stubby fingers, and they do not work well for painting.
It can be
I
tough.
always thought
it
that was funny
tough.
because like Eric had that more traditional, like he's the DM as well, and he paints all his minis, and then you were like, yeah, no, I buy them, and then I have the good people paint them for me.
Yeah. It's like,
lean on people's strengths, man.
Right.
That's not one of mine.
And it's always been nice to you, because I always thought it's kind of funny, because that is kind of, I feel like your signature as a player at my table is that you're always the one where your minis have the most transformation.
Yeah.
I mean, we have 4 or 5 Carisses from campaign 1.
Almost 3 at least.
So I
at
love
least that I know of.
I always talk about that whole, like, if I were a player, I would totally do that, because I don't want to have to remake my mini. I want to be able to like put them in like this rolling, like kind of visual display of like, that's level 1, that's level 5. That's when I got the new sword. That's when I lost the sword.
Right.
It's like, that's when I got a scar, so I cut my mini's arm off, and then I got a new one, so then I had to make my army grow back.
Yep.
And I think that's, as a player, one of the few ways you can really kind of like tell your
Change
story.
up your story.
And meeting a good painter is really key to that, because if they're
It's
all
tough.
gray,
Yeah.
that's a really hard story to tell.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I think sometimes things like airbrushing comes in handy for people who feel like they can't really do the
I'm
brush
trying to learn.
painting. Yeah.
I'm trying.
Yeah, so, I do recommend it sometimes if anybody wants to jump in, but they're a little more reticent about painting with brushes. Airbrush is sometimes a little easier to get into and not feel as intimidated by it.
Now, obviously, we talk about, all the time, but, what is another kind of basic tip that you could try to give people to get started? I know you've given a few so far.
Yeah, my biggest one would probably be patience. And when you do base coats for miniatures, go thin on the base coats, but for any sort of detail work, especially with like metallic paints, you don't want to thin those down too much, because then you run the risk of getting completely rid of the metallic side of the paints.
Yeah, I imagine those kind of are special in that regard.
Unless you're doing the non-metallic metallic painting that sort of the experts do
pseudo,
now, because they paint it with normal base paints to look as if it is metallic.
With the layers. Yeah, I've seen that. Those
and then
pretty
blending to brush it all and make it look metallic. So
Right.
that is phenomenal. I am trying to get into that, but for right now we are using base metallics.
Now, obviously, you're a bit more dexterous than Dan and I with our little, stubby hands. I mean, is there a way for someone who still wants to paint? Maybe they don't have someone to paint for them to maybe get around that with like something to hold or magnification?
I always recommend holders. Even I use them to keep things steady, and you don't have to hold them with your hands too. Like, let's say, because some of the holders are handheld and you have to hold them while you also hold the paintbrush.
Yeah,
and that can be difficult to hold steady both things at the same time.
I had to borrow one of your little like mini base holders because like holding the mini just like cramped my hand in like 2 seconds. I can't keep that kind of pose on my hand.
Yeah, what I would recommend is holders, but also you can get holders that sit on the table that you can secure to the table, and then you can use both hands to steady yourself, and you don't have to worry as much about making sure 2 things are steady enough to paint on, and then you're shaking while you do it.
Plus, I always see you use a lot of that blue stuff.
Yeah, we do. I tend to use a lot of the sort of museum putties, what we call it.
Paper tack?
Something like that. I think,
like
paper tack. Yeah, it's just sticky. It's sort of like I don't know, like silly putty or something.
But it doesn't dry.
It doesn't dry. It's sticky enough that you can use it to hold something in place but still remove it without damaging any paint jobs or removing anything that you don't want removed from your miniature. I use those to hold them onto my holder. And then if I need the holder to sit on the table for me, I will use that putty as well to hold the holder on the table and keep it in place for me. And it's fairly good as long as you don't like keep messing with it. It'll hold your miniature fine.
Gotcha.
Obviously, if you're very rough with the miniature, it will move because it isn't meant to dry and stay completely in one place. But if you use it properly, you can get a pretty solid sort of hold on your miniature.
I mean, I think it's pretty pertinent, obviously, with Drexla's mini, and I think this goes for like both of you, is that how much does it of this kind of balancing act? So one of finding a mini and painting it of
true.
What I have in my mind with what I want it to look like and how am I actually going to do that, and sometimes having to kind of make concessions to kind of get close enough.
Yeah, because obviously this miniature didn't come with the mechanical wings that we really love seeing.
Were you trying to find one maybe? Or?
I looked for
you
one,
tried,
but
right?
could not find
yeah.
one.
I mean, that's something where maybe down the road you can maybe try to find some material. Maybe we might be able to do a custom.
Something. Yeah, I will try. That's interesting. I'd have to think of like some things that could be used to make that look.
Like maybe some shiny laminated plastics, and something that we can maybe look to. But I mean, there are some times I imagine you do have to just kind of go, it's going to be close enough.
Right. Or I might be able to do like a molding of some green stuff and get some like custom wings done. Yeah.
I mean, so Dan, how many minis did you look through before deciding specifically on this one?
Probably 100 or more.
Yeah,
I scoured Etsy and
yeah. So you went the
Amazon
Etsy route. Like,
and
I feel
everybody.
like when you do the Hero Forge, you have everything there, but Etsy is a tunnel.
It's a grab
that
bag.
It's a cave you can get buried in and never come back from. Because even I, as a DM, I look at some of those custom minis and I'm like, oh, I want every one of them.
Oh yeah,
they're gorgeous. They're big, but they're also gonna put me out of a home.
As a prolific shopper of Etsy, I can lose myself for hours in there just looking for the perfect miniature.
So what really for this one then really kind of was the one where you're like, okay, I'm gonna buy that one.
Like I said, it's just she looks probably the most like the Tiny Tina character. She
Yeah,
was like a smaller girl with the pigtails and sitting on there just working on her most recent device that she's trying to her badonkadonk or whatever she's got going
right. But yeah, honestly, I do think that she looks super close to what you were wanting out of it, at least at the time, because obviously she's changed.
And the commission art too. When we got the commission art first. And that was one of the few ones where we had the art before the mini.
Honestly, it was super helpful as a reference point for the miniature. It really helped give me. It sort of alleviated because sometimes I'll just be like, it's left to me, so I have to figure out like what it looks like and give it a motif. But this was really easy for me because you were like, here's what she looks like. Yeah. There you go. There's your reference for the miniature. It was perfect.
I feel it's kind of funny sometimes because it's like for you and Etlink, you both kind of indirectly help each other by making the art, but
the
then
references,
it's more of a who has to start the change.
Yep. So sometimes it's the miniature that inspires the comic, and other times it's the comic that inspires the miniature. Yeah, so this was super fun. And if you'd like to see pictures or videos that we're going to take of this miniature, you can always see the artwork on our Extraeus Project Discord. Yeah. It's super fun. Not only do we have our artwork on there, but the artwork of fellow artists as well that have joined. They show their commissions on there, their digital artwork, miniature artwork, anything that you can think of. So we always appreciate you going on there. And if you'd love to what you see, let us know.
And also check out Couple of Nerds Productions, our YouTube page. There where you can can find all kind of the videos for all these podcasts where we include some of the kind of art in the video itself. So if you want to watch the podcast and look at the item that we're looking at, and particularly in Comic Cave, check us out on YouTube, as well as for all our shorts and all our little smaller kind of events that we do.
You can always find little shorts, teasers, anything like that on upcoming episodes on the YouTube page as well. So today we spoke specifically about our final miniature series player character, miniature Drexla. We spoke about the inspiration behind her design, what it took to get to this particular miniature, is, you know, scouring the internet for so many, the painting techniques that went into it, and then some of the challenges as well of painting such a small and detailed miniature that it represents such a small character as well, you know, the sort of challenges in putting all that detail work in without muddling it too much. So for our next
now that we finally get to do something new,
right, we don't have another miniature to go to, so we are going to be sort of shifting back a little bit into the comic side of Comic Cave.
Going to be joined again by Etlink, right?
We're going to have some fun collabs as well as some of her comic work out there. So it'll be fun to see what we've got coming up. So let us, you know, come join us again next time to see what we've got in store for you. All right. And remember, if you like what you heard, remember to like, review, and subscribe to support the podcast. I'd like to say a final thank you to Dan for joining us here today. Thank you so much for lending us a little bit of your time.
And thank you so much for inviting me, and hope to talk to you all soon.
Absolutely. We loved talking to you about your character, Drexla, and the miniature that comes with it. It was super fun. So I'm super excited for that. So thank you again for joining us on another Comic Cave episode. We truly appreciate it. Make sure that you stay creative out there and you have a fun time with all of your artistic endeavors. Have a good night.